What's up, everyone? This is Rancer, and welcome to another review for December the I left my phone out there and we got to get it, but oh well. I believe it's December the 3rd, Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, that's the day I'm recording this actually. And welcome to my another video game review, and this is another one for the Wii U console actually. And I got a second game that I'm going to review in this one, and that's actually a 3DS title, and I actually got it right over here, and I forgot to bring it out. So, and if you see my unboxing video at least a week ago, you've probably seen the games that I got, the two games I got for these stuff. So I'm going to be reviewing both two games in this video. Now, this probably is not going to be a whole video, and if I do manage to review both games in one whole video, then it's just what? If not, it's going to be a two-parter. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to start with the 3DS game I got. So the first game review that, like I said, is a 3DS game is The Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds. Actually, so what's the game pretty much about? Now, obviously, if you're a Zelda fan, you probably already know. Link is the main hero of the game. Actually, Zelda's there as the princess, damsel in distress, and you pretty much got a bad guy to stop. Actually, it's pretty much the same anyway. So you pretty much get toward the puzzles. Now when it comes to I am a bit tired today. Apparently there's so much snow out there right now. I mean, my school thing has been going to be closed within a few hours. I can't go there at all. I have been given the option if I can still go to the school or not and stuff. So I can't go to school today due to the heavy amount of snow. So the schools are closed now. But anyway, back to the game. So, what did I personally like about Zelda: A Link Between Worlds? Well, I will say first though that it is a sequel to A Link to the Past. If you are familiar with, if you've grown up in the early 90s with that game and stuff, then there's definitely a lot you can expect from this game. And that it's going to take place in the same world map. It's going to have the same enemies from the previous, from A Link to the Past, and it's going to have very similar. Places like the village, the Hyrule Castle, Death Mountain, and so forth. Like I said, if you played A Link to the Past, there's a lot you'll definitely be expecting in this. And so what did I personally like? First of all, I actually like the plot of the game. Actually, if you could believe, I actually like the plot of the game. Actually, and that stuff. Now, this is actually a good plot. Very similar to the previous Zelda games, the plots in those games are actually pretty good in that stuff. Sure, there's some confusing aspects on some of them, like some things are not explained well, or maybe it's just a bit confusing. I'll definitely admit that. Yeah. But the plot in this game is actually quite very good, actually. Quite very good. Regardless if you're either a Zelda fan, or maybe you grew up with A Link to the Past and stuff, this is actually quite good. And the reason I think it's a pretty good plot is because of the plot twist near the second half of the game, or pretty much near the end, pretty much. And so I personally really like the plot. I definitely like the character development of characters like Hilda, Ravio, and especially the character Yuga, or Yoga. I don't really know his name, but I think it's Yuga, I think, and that's what his name was, I believe. And just in case some of you might be wondering, Yuga is actually the bad guy in the game, and that stuff. And pretty much his goal here is, now keep in mind this is pretty much a spoiler, and that's if you haven't played the game yet, but I will put this video up as a spoiler thing for both this game and the second one I'm going to be reviewing. And so if you do not want to get spoiled in that, then don't watch this video at all. But if you already have played the game, actually, the whole games yourselves, that stuff, or you actually do want to hear a bit about the spoiling part, then you can watch it if you want to. But like I said, if you don't want to get spoiled, don't watch this. Just a recommendation. And sorry for that little burp. Excuse me, that was very inappropriate of me. So basically, like, Yuga's main plot here in the game, again, spoiler alert, his main goal of the game is to revive Ganon, that was defeated in A Link to the Past. Absorb his power, and transform Yuga himself into Ganon in a different type of form. Like, it's pretty much the same form as the original Ganon, just in different colors and that stuff. But Hilda comes along and stops, and now Hilda tells him to go find the 7 sages that have been scattered out throughout the Dark World. Or from what this game explains, what the Dark World is an alternate version of Hyrule called Low World, where basically the whole land of Lowell has been filled with nothing but thieves, monsters, and so forth. And almost a lot of people in the game are extremely mean to you, extremely big. Well, how should I say, big a-holes, and that some of them are. But that's just my opinion, though. So pretty much, I actually like the plot of the game with the plot twist at the end. It definitely makes the story more interesting. And plus, let's keep in mind, the story does in fact make really good sense. Like I said, even if you've never played A Link to the Past, actually, even if you've never played A Link to the Past, the story here is going to make sense to you. Unlike the previous ones where sometimes it's a bit confusing, or there are some things they don't explain very well. My second thing I definitely like the graphics of the game, and how much they really make good use of the 3D effects here in A Link Between Worlds. Like, I definitely like the dungeon design. Some dungeons are very well creative, especially redone versions of the old dungeons from A Link to the Past are remastered and redone a little bit differently in very creative ways as well. Especially the design of Hyrule. Like I said, the whole world of Hyrule is the same as the one from The Link to the Past. It has almost all the iconic spots. A lot of the spots are very similar. Though there is a couple differences in the graphics, though. Like if you remember in the game A Link to the Past, when you alter between the light world and the dark world, there was always a path that be near a spot. For example, before you get to the lake down, there's actually a bridge that takes you there if you were in the original Hyrule. But if you go to Low World, actually, the bridge is not there longer. In Zelda Link to the Past, that bridge would stay there no matter what. And but in this game, each big, huge section of Hyrule in this game is pretty much like just a whole area surrounded by cliffs and that there's no way to get across. Because unless you find a portal or a crack on the wall to get to the Dark World in that area, that's the only way you enter it, or you can use the fast travel system in this game, which we'll get to in a minute, to get there faster. And the other thing I like about the graphics is the design on the characters in the game. Now, this is pretty much the one complaint that most of the game media outlet, and especially reviewers, have pretty much said is the biggest complaint. It's just that the design on the characters is not very that appealing, which I could understand maybe in this form of style for a 3DS game. I could understand a reason, though. But let's keep in mind, it's a sequel to A Link to the Past anyway, so it's pretty much they still have to make it the cartoon style that sticks true to the original game. That this game is a sequel, since this game is a sequel to A Link to the Past. It's like, meh. Like honestly, I wasn't really bugged by it. I definitely think it suits the character Link and that stuff well, and it is sticking true to the original, to A Link to the Past character design. It's sticking very true to that. And the other thing about the graphics I really do like, actually, is the frames per second. This game runs at completely full 60 frames per second throughout the entire game with no problems at all. It's literally quite very good. That stuff. I personally really love the graphics of the game. But my third I actually like. I really do like the gameplay of the game. Now, it does have classic Zelda gameplay, but old basic classic Zelda gameplay, but that's not a bad thing. That is a very good thing when it comes to this game, actually. The thing though is just that the gameplay here is actually not only the same like classic Zelda gameplay. The team of who made this game, actually, especially the producer JJ Anoma. I am sorry if I can't pronounce his name. His name is just so hard to pronounce. Am I the only one who thinks that? But anyways, not only is this game stick true to the original Link to the Past classic gameplay, and I don't mean just the old way, I mean the exact same gameplay, secrets, and that sort of stuff. This game actually, believe it or not, they made a couple changes to this game that completely changes the old cliche formula in the Zelda series from the previous games. Yes, you heard me say that, but allow me to explain that. But let me explain first. Now the reason I said, now the first formula that they kind of complete change is the items in the game. You'll remember in the previous Zelda games, that the game literally forces you to go, I'm sorry if I can't speak. You'll remember that in the previous Zelda games, almost every Zelda games ever since Ocarina of Time literally forced you to go do these dungeons in order, and you can only gain these special items if you go into that dungeon and get in the dungeon. It's been a cliche formula that's been going on since Ocarina of Time for at least 15 years, and I'm pretty sure some people, some Zelda fans at this point or something like that would like to see a couple changes into the series and that stuff. And that's where the formula in this game comes in, actually. Hey, the first thing they did that completely changed, the first new feature they added to the game's gameplay, that's a completely different feature, that's completely different from the Zelda games and completely changes the formula of it, is the item rent/buy system. That, unlike, and like I said before, in the previous Zelda games, you were forced to do these dungeons in order, and each dungeon had an item that would allow you to gain access to the next one. And because of that, it didn't give you enough time to explore the whole world of Hyrule. And that, like, gives you exploration as if it was really a huge open world game. And I personally think that, I personally would have to agree with everyone that that was a problem with the Zelda games from the past. Even Ocarina of Time, that's personally my favorite Zelda game of all time, did have that problem, and that was my only complaint or problem with that game. In this, however, how the rent and buy system works in that stuff is that it has almost every item in the game, the main important ones you need in order to get inside a dungeon. Such as a wind rod, a fire rod, a ice rod, a sand rod, bombs, a boomerang, hammer, a bow and arrow, and so forth. It's got pretty much almost every major important item in the game. You can either rent it for 50 rupees, or depending on the item you get, until later on in the game when you beat a couple dungeons, you're given the option to actually buy the items. And how it works is that if you rent an item, let's say for example you rent 3 items, like the boomerang, bomb, and arrow, and bows, for a certain dungeon. That stuff. You can pretty much use these as much as you want, just as long as you don't overrun the gauge, actually. And this is the same exact gauge that was originally from A Link to the Past. If you remember the Link to the Past, you had a green gauge, and every time you use an item in that, it depletes a small amount. It depletes pretty much a small amount of your gauge, actually. If you go a bit too much, you can't use it until it recharges. Isn't that? Here in A Link to the Between Worlds, it's the same exact. It's pretty much the same exact thing, actually. It's the same thing. Okay. Yeah, you use it, whenever you use an item, it depletes a part of your gauge. You use it too much, you can't use it until it recharges. Or you can try to go find some energy bottles, and actually that increases the energy bar. That way you'll be able to use your item more. So, whereas in the previous Zelda games, they each had their own amount of ammo, actually. If you run out, you're going to have to go back and buy more. But thanks to the gauge feature, you can use as much as you want infinitely. You just got to watch the gauge for the game in there. And quite personally, actually, like, at first I had a problem with it because of renting, but it's because that I found that you can get so much rupees throughout by either completing some side missions or maybe searching every section of a dungeon and that stuff. You can pretty much get so much, enough that you could buy a couple of them, actually. Now keep in mind, though, a couple of them are pretty expensive, though. Some of them are like 800 rupees to buy them. Even the fire and ice were like 1,200 rupees, so you literally have to save quite a lot of rupees to do that. No. So now you might be wondering, how do you know if you need these items or not? Here's the thing, though. Some of these dungeons have these stones that show a picture of the item on it. Show a picture of this item. And that stuff. So that means what you have to do is you either walk back or fast travel back to your home in order to rent and buy the weapon. And then you can go back to the dungeon to go do the dungeon. The dungeon pretty much lets you know, which I do like that, but at the same time I do find it kind of a bit annoying, though, that you have to keep backtracking back to your house and that stuff. But if you have the fast travel feature, that's not going to be a huge problem at all, though. It's just that if you didn't do it, not going to use it, it does get kind of annoying, though, but whatever. And the second change they add into this is that because that the free and the second change they made, instead of doing the dungeons in order that the game forced you to, you can do this dungeon you can pick any dungeon you feel like it, and do them in any order you want. And you have all the time you need to do, and you have plenty of time to do that stuff. So what this leads to is that this allows you to explore the whole land of Hyrule, to either do some side quests, get more rupees, find more heart pieces, and so forth. Like, this is pretty much a prime example of how I think a Zelda game really should do. It's a prime example of that. And I'm hoping that if the producer does promise that the Zelda game on the Wii U does do something just like this, is that with a few more changes to the series and that stuff, I'm going to definitely look forward to that game. But anyway, so the other thing I like about the gameplay is pretty much the amount of secrets and side content. Actually, there's a lot of secrets and side content in the game, including secret treasures to find and side quests that give you heart pieces or rupees. Sorry about it, and so forth. Actually, if you play Zelda games, you pretty much know this stuff. Pretty much. I will say if there is one problem to the gameplay, I would have to say is that although there is quite a lot of content in this, like every Zelda game, it's quite a lot. I did feel like now keep in mind, I only have 2 hearts left to completely fulfill my gauge of hearts and that stuff. Because in Zelda games, there's only a maximum of 20 you can actually do. You can hold pretty much, unless maybe in this game they added more. But I only have 2 hearts left to fill it out now. So that's just to let everyone know, though. There's not as much content in this as there was in the previous Zelda games, actually, now. But now keep in mind, though, that's not a major complaint, that's a minor complaint. And the reason I say that is because there is still quite a lot of content in this stuff, and it could take you many hours and many hours to actually get all of them. But if you play the game A Link to the Past and then quickly solve how to get to this item or heart piece and that stuff, you could probably get all the content in this game pretty much within a much shorter time period. And that's my other complaint I want to mention about the story part. The story is not as long as the previous Zelda games are. The previous Zelda games, they were extremely long in that stuff. Now, but that's if you don't count the gameplay parts. If you just count the cutscenes, and so this game does not have as many cutscenes, isn't that stuff? And the story length is not as long as the previous Zelda games. Now, I can understand that because of A Link to the Past. In A Link to the Past, the main plot of the game is long, but not as long as the Zelda games that came out after that stuff. And honestly, to me though, I pretty much have grown up with the Zelda games, like Ocarina of Time and stuff. They have pretty long stories. And regardless if they're either confusing or not, stuff, if I still like it, I still like it. And so, it's just in here they're not as long though, but I can understand they're sticking true to the original game. I can definitely understand that. And so, okay. So, I don't have a problem with that if they're trying to stick true to the original game. So, but there is one thing that I really like the most about the gameplay, and that's actually the puzzles, actually. I absolutely love the puzzles in this game. Actually, they're in my personal opinion, actually, the gameplay of the puzzles are possibly the most innovative, creative puzzles you'll ever see in the Zelda game. That's a mixture of with the merging with against the wall ability that you get when you beat Yuga the second time. And let me see here. Especially the dungeons mixed with the 3D environment, the 3D effects and that stuff. You pretty much got some of the most inventive, creative puzzles you'll ever see in the Zelda game. That stuff. My only small complaint though about the puzzles, however, in the game is that they're mostly on the easy side, though. And I don't mean easy up to the point where you just easily figure it out. I mean, trust me, when it comes to Zelda games, a lot of puzzles are really easy to figure out, though. But don't worry though about that. Some of the puzzles do eventually get harder as the game progresses. As you progress farther into the game, it does eventually get a bit harder. But what I'm pretty much saying is the majority of the puzzles are mostly on the easy side. There are a few that are pretty hard and stuff. And there's even some puzzles, like one I figured that's pretty much one of those that it's easy to figure out, but extremely hard to time or pull off actually because of the way you have to move. And that stuff. And it requires precision timing actually, though. But keep in mind though, that is very common in Zelda games. And that stuff. And but I still love the puzzles in the game. They're still creative, inventive, and yeah. Now before I give this a score, I'm gonna see stand up, and I'm probably gonna make this a 2-part video, actually. So I'm gonna make this a 2-part. So how do I rate this game actually? Well, like I said before, it's classic Zelda gameplay. It was a few changes to the series that completely changed the formula by giving you more exploration. Overall, you can do the dungeons in any order you want, and you can either buy or rent items anytime you want, or if you need them for a certain dungeon that has a stone. Or the game and that stuff. The fast travel system. Oh, and I forgot to mention the fast travel system. The fast travel system in the game is pretty much very similar to the Link Pass. You use a wedge in it, you call her by the bell, and then she takes you to the spot. But you need to activate these bird things in order to access those there. Because once you activate all of them in that stuff and you fast travel, then it will be much easier to actually get them. Then it will be much faster, easier to get them. Yeah, but personally that's me. But anyways, so how do I rate this? Now, like I said, classic Zelda gameplay is really good. A few changes this year that completely changed the formula and gives you more exploration, and you can do the dungeons anywhere you want. The plot is actually well explained and very interesting in that stuff, with really good plot twists at the end of the game. The graphics are actually really good for this game. The 3D visuals are actually very impressive. And my favorite part of the whole game is some of the most unique puzzles you'll ever see in a Zelda game. Though. Now keep in mind though, I do have a couple now like I said, I do have some flaws with it. Like most of the puzzles are on the easy side. The plot's not as long as the previous Zelda games, but I can understand sticking true to the original game, and I completely understand that reason. And sorry. Anyways, and pretty much there's not as much side content as there was in the Zelda games that came out after Link. They came out from the previous Zelda games, but there's still quite a lot though that can keep you occupied for a few more extra hours. I give Zelda A Link Between Worlds a 9 out of 10. That's right, I actually think it's quite a good Zelda game. It's definitely the best Zelda game in many years, actually. And quite honestly, to me, actually, I think this game is almost as good as Ocarina of Time, and as good as Majora's Mask. And I think it's a little bit better than Wind Waker, and I think it's a lot better than Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess. So in my opinion, this is by far the best Zelda game in years, actually. If you own a 3DS, it's definitely worth a buy. If you actually want to, my plan getting a 3DS this year for Christmas, this is one game I highly recommend you get. It's completely really good. It sticks true to the original game, runs at 60 frames per second, classic game, played with really good changes to the game and the series. And like I said, if the producer of the game is still going to do that for the Zelda game on the Wii U, I'm definitely looking forward to see what he can do on that game. So that's it for part 1. We'll be back for part 2. We're gonna review the second game.